Hi, everyone. I'm Trish from Downtown Book and Sound, and I'm here to welcome an author by the name of Douglas Wolk. And he is the author of All the Marvels, uh, which I'm going to let him tell you about it because I think it's one of the most interesting books I've ever heard of. And Douglas, thank you for joining us today here in Downtown Salinas, home
Thanks
of
so much.
John Steinbeck.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Trish. So, All of the Marvels is subtitled A Journey to the Ends of the Biggest Story Ever Told. It is a book about reading all 27,000 Marvel superhero comics published from 1961 onward as a single narrative, as a gigantic 500,000 page story that has been going on for 60 years and reflects the world that made it and the world that it was born into. That's the gist of it.
So what actually inspired you to write this book?
The idea actually initially came from my son. When he was about 10 years old, he and I had read comics together since he was small, but never superhero comics because that's what my dad likes, right? He's right about that. And then when he was about 10, he realized, oh, superhero comics are a complicated system, and he really likes complicated systems. So he came to me and he said, hey, Dad, I would like to read all the Marvel comics. And I was like, great. This will last a week. This will be a fun week that we have together. And 3 months later, he read a few hundred of them and was, Dad, I think I'm more interested in the modern crossover era. Can we keep reading together? And we kept reading comics together. And at some point I thought, what would it actually be like to read all of them? Because they really are all one big story. Every part of it is connected to every other part. Any part can refer to any earlier part. What would it be like to actually do this thing that you're not really supposed to do, which is read all of them? And 6 years later, here we are.
So it took you 6 years.
It took me a couple of years to read them all and then considerably longer to write the
book. That's awesome. So where are you from originally?
So I'm originally from East Lansing, Michigan.
Oh, wow.
Grew up there, and I was fortunate enough to have access to the Michigan State University Library, which has a remarkable, gigantic comic book collection there. So I was the kid who was coming in every weekend and reading 40-year-old issues of Wonder Woman and All-Star Comics and everything else I could put my hands on. It's a hobby, a habit, one of those things, more a habit than a hobby that's just followed me ever since.
Well, that's pretty cool. So and then how did you end up on the West Coast?
So I moved to New York after college, and I lived there for 12 years or so, and moved out to Portland, Oregon about 2003 because it was affordable and beautiful and a very big comic city. It is probably the biggest comic city in America now. It used to have more cartoonists per capita than any other city, and now it just has more cartoonists, period, than any other city in the U.S.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I know at least one cartoonist that lives there. So
there you go.
I'm connected in. So what do you think people are going to get out of your book? Like, why would I want to buy your book?
The idea of All the Marvels is to let me be a tour guide. This is a territory, like these 27,000 comic books, this is a territory that I have walked every inch of. Nobody is supposed to do that. I read all of these comics so you don't have to. So I've kind of positioned myself as a tour guide, as somebody who can show you around and point you at paths you might want to take and areas you might want to look at and ways that you might want to look at this gigantic story. There are parts of the book that are chapters about particular characters or particular storylines. There are parts of it that are chapters about other ways of looking at the story, a particular month where a really interesting thing happened, or let's talk about monsters within the Marvel story, because that's a huge thing. The Marvel line evolved partly from a line of comics that were monster stories. Or let's talk about the role of presidents within the story. Let's talk about the role of pop music within the story. And then at the end, there's a chapter or an appendix that's pretty much my attempt to write a plot summary of 60 years worth of Marvel. So,
Well, that's pretty cool. So you are guiding people into maybe help them explore or discover a particular area of this gigantic story.
yeah, I'm much more interested in guiding people to discover the parts of it that they would be interested in than in selling people on the parts I like.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Thank you.
So, would you mind reading a little passage from your book?
I could
Or
absolutely.
do you
read
have
the
something
passage.
you'd like to share
Uh,
out of the book?
Sure, I can read even the first couple pages.
And you actually have a theme song too.
I do have a theme song. My friend Katie and I may play the theme song in a couple minutes.
We would love that.
Excellent. So I'll read the beginning of the first chapter, The Mountain of Marvels.
Mm.
The 27,000 or so superhero comic books that Marvel Comics has published since 1961 are the longest continuous self-contained work of fiction ever created, over 500,000 pages to date and growing. Thousands of writers and artists have contributed to it. Every week, about 20 slim pamphlets of 20 or 30 pages apiece are added to the body of its single enormous story. By design, any of its episodes can build on the events of any that came before it, and they're all more or less consistent with one another. Every school child recognizes the Marvel story's protagonists: Spider-Man, the Incredible Hulk, the X-Men. 18 of the 100 highest grossing movies of all time, from Avengers Endgame and Black Panther down to Captain America, the Winter Soldier, and Guardians of the Galaxy, are based on parts of the story, and it has profoundly influenced a lot of the rest. Star Wars and Avatar and The Matrix would be unimaginable without it. Its characters and the images associated with them appear on t-shirts, travel pillows, dog leashes, pizza cutters, shampoo bottles, fishing gear, jigsaw puzzles, and bags of salad greens. Some of the people who love the story also love to be reminded of it or to associate themselves with particular characters from it. Its catchphrases have seeped into standard usage. Spidey sense, you wouldn't like me when I'm angry. I say thee nay. Healing factor, no, you move. Bitten by a radioactive spider. Puny humans. Threat or menace. True believers. Enough said. Parts of it have been adapted into serial TV dramas, animated cartoons, prose novels, picture books, video games, theme park attractions, and a Broadway musical. For someone who lives in our society, having some familiarity with the Marvel story is useful in much the same way as, say, being familiar with the Bible is useful for someone who lives in a Judeo-Christian society. Its iconography and influence are pervasive. The Marvel story is a mountain, smack in the middle of contemporary culture. The mountain wasn't always there. At first, there was a little subterranean wonder in that spot, a cave that was rumored to have monsters inside it. Colorful adventurers had once tested their skills there, and lovers met at its mouth. Then, in the 1960s, it started bulging up above the surface of the earth, and it never stopped growing. It's not the kind of mountain whose face you can climb. It doesn't seem hazardous, and it isn't, but those who try to follow what appear to be direct trails to its summit find that it's grown higher every time they look up. The way to experience what the mountain has to offer is to go inside it and explore its innumerable bioluminescent caverns and twisty passageways. Some of them lead to stunning vantage points onto the landscape that surrounds it. There is no clear pathway into the mountain from the outside. Parts of it are abandoned and choked with cobwebs. Other parts are tedious, gruesome, ludicrous, infuriating. And yet people emerge from it all the time, gasping and cheering, telling one another about the marvels they've seen, then rushing back in for more.
That was great. I'm so excited to have a chance to actually read the book. This really sounds fantastic. And what else would you like to share with our online audience?
Do we want to sing a theme song?
I think we can.
We can sing a theme
Oh
song.
yay, let's do the theme song. That's so fun.
Right.
But
Of course you can. Of course you can. Look by Annalie New. It's so good.
And so what are these, like little ukuleles?
these are ukuleles.
Yes.
Okay. That's so cool.
I don't need to be in the shot, but I do need to see
You do
paper.
need to be in the shot because
Okay.
you're playing ukulele.
All right.
I can't be playing two ukuleles and have one of them be invisible.
That would be perfect.
That's true.
If you're singing, you don't have to.
Oh, I'm not singing. actually, so I'm fine.
Okay.
You can go either way.
I'm just second ukulele.
So this is an adaptation of an old Australian country song, and it's about how I researched this book. It is.
It is.
I was toting a short box up the stairway to my storage space when the ghost of Stanley appeared and got right up in my face. He said, "Howdy, true believer." I said, "Smiley, get me gone. If you presented it, I've read it. You got nothing left to sell me on." He said, "Of course I do, Effendi. Let me have a look." I said, "Nope, I've read through every Marvel superhero book. I read every one, Stan. I read every one, Stan. It was mostly fun, Stan. Shared them with my son, Stan. Comics by the ton, Stan. I read every one. I read Galacor, Sci-Force, Omega Flight, Valkyrie, Vision, Bolt, Loki, Venom, Space Knight, Nick Fury, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Jubilee, Spider-Man, Herculean Rage, Monsters on the Prowl, Creatures on the Loose, The Amazing Spider-Man, Fight, Substance Abuse, and I read every one, Stan. I read every one, Stan. It was mostly fun, Stan. Shared them with my son, Stan. Comics by the ton, Stan. I read every one. I read Strange Tales, Marvel Tales, Tales of Suspense, Contrary Wolverine, Damaging Evidence, Chain Darkness, Cut the Shadows, Chamber of Chills, White Tiger, Winter, Maker, Middle, Shoulder, One That Kills, Codenames, Spitfire, Firestar, Blaze, Annihilation, Damnation, Ant-Man, Last Days. I read every one, Stan. I read every one, Stan. It was mostly fun, Stan. Shared them with my son, Stan. Comics by the ton, Stan. I read every one. I read U.S. Agent, Captain Britain, X-Men, Captain Universe, Doctor Spectrum, Doctor Strange, Linda, Crown, Student Nurse, Bloodseed, Bloodstone, Blood and Glory, Blink, Blade, Wonder Woman, Humanity, Infinity Crusade, Hercules, Prince of Power, Chaos War, Chaos King, Wonder Man, Giant Size Man Thing. I read every one, Stan. I read every one, Stan. It was mostly fun, Stan. Sharing with my son, Stan. Comics by the ton, Stan. I read every one. I read Dominic, Fortune, Domino, Hot Shots, Mighty Thor, Mystique, Mosaic, Magic, Micronauts, Rob, Royal Wounds, Rocket Raccoon, Marvel Now, Point One, Deadpool, Too Soon, 4, Marvel's Captain Marvel, and the Carol, Perfect Female, Fantastic Four, 1, 2, 3, 4. I read every one, Stan. I read every one, Stan. It was mostly fun, Stan. Shared it with my son, Stan. Comics by the ton, Stan. I read every one. I read each and every one. I read every one.
Yeah! Woo! So, all of us here at Downtown Book and Sound want to really thank you for coming to our store today and for sharing your wonderful talent with our community, and for writing this book, because we're all excited to get it in our hands and read it ourselves. Everyone, I wanted to share two things really quick before we sign off tonight, and that is that Douglas, the author, is here signing books tonight, which is pretty awesome. He also brought some book plates, so if you bought your book somewhere else and you're watching this, you just send us a private message or an email to downtownbookandsound@gmail.com, and we'll mail you a book plate no matter where you bought your book from, and that's for free. And the first 10 people that come to the event tonight have an opportunity to get a free comic book that is a collection of a lot of different comics on the inside. So we have a whole bunch of different ones, and you can come and get your free book at the event today before 7 p.m. So thanks again, Douglas.
Thank you so much.
And what's next for you, real quick?
What's next? This is a full-on tour of California. So I'm going to be a couple days in the Bay Area and then going home to do the Portland Book Festival.
Yay. Well, thank you again for joining us today. And we're going to sign off. We'll see you in the bookstore.
Okay, so what was